Hello everyone, welcome to Boss Economic World. I am your host. We analyze the truth behind economic events in a humorous way and restore the full picture of the events in a concise way. Today is November 27th, 2025. And if you are sitting there in the UK looking at your payslip, scratching your head, and wondering why a pay rise feels like a pay cut, you have come to the right place. Today, we are dissecting a phenomenon that is arguably the politician's favorite magic trick. It's called fiscal drag. It sounds boring, doesn't it? It sounds like something a tire does on wet asphalt. But make no mistake, this is the single most aggressive raid on your wallet in modern British history, and it was confirmed today by Chancellor Rachel Reeves. The headline news? The freeze on income tax thresholds, the point at which you start paying tax or start paying more tax, has been extended. Again. For another 3 years beyond the original plan. By the time this policy finishes wringing us dry in the early 2030s, 5.4 million workers, people who likely consider themselves middle class, will be dragged into the 40% and 45% tax brackets. We are going to break down the logic, the hypocrisy, the numbers, and the devastating impact on your pension and savings. Because today, the government decided that the best way to balance the books is to pretend that inflation doesn't exist. Let's start with the basics. How does this magic trick work? Imagine you are standing in a swimming pool. The water level is the tax threshold. As long as your head is above water, you pay the basic rate. If the water reaches your nose, you pay the higher rate. Normally, as you grow taller, the government raises the water level so your relative position stays the same. That is fair. That keeps your purchasing power parity in check. But what Chancellor Reeves, and let's be fair, her predecessor Rishi Sunak, have done is freeze the water level while pouring more water into the pool. The water rises, but the line where you get penalized stays exactly where it was in 2021. Here is the data. Today, the Chancellor confirmed that the freeze on personal tax thresholds will last an extra 3 years. This means the tax-free allowance remains stuck at £12,570, and the 40% tax rate kicks in at £50,271. Now, in 2021, £50,000 was a very different salary compared to 2025. In 2025, with the accumulated inflation of the last 4 years, £50,000 buys you significantly less. But the taxman doesn't care about what your money buys, he only cares about the number on the check. This is fiscal drag. It is the stealth tax. It allows the government to stand at the podium and say, "We promise not to raise tax rates." And technically, they aren't. The rate is still 20% or 40%. But because they haven't adjusted the goalposts for the reality of 2025 money, they are dragging millions of you into brackets designed for the wealthy of 2010. Let's look at the carnage and the numbers, because in Boss Economic World, we trust data, not slogans. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the people who actually do the math, estimates this measure alone will raise £13 billion by 2030 to 31. That is £13 billion taken directly out of household consumption. But here is the statistic that should make you sit up straight. By the end of this period, almost 1 in 4 taxpayers will be in the top 2 income tax bands. Think about that. The 40% tax rate was originally designed in the late 1980s to target the very top sliver of earners, the top 5%. Today, thanks to this freeze, a senior nurse, a police sergeant, or a department head at a secondary school is falling into a tax bracket historically reserved for the rich. The OBR projects that an extra 5.2 million individuals will be dragged into paying the basic income tax rate of 20%. These are the poorest workers who previously paid nothing. Furthermore, 4.8 million people will move into the 40% rate. These are the people earning between £50,271 and £125,140. And another 600,000 will be pushed into the punitive 45% top rate. The result? Britain's tax take is projected to hit an all-time high of 38% of economic output. We are moving from a mid-tax economy to a high-tax economy, but without the high-quality public services of Scandinavia to match it. Now, let's enjoy a moment of dark humor. Do you remember the general election campaign? Do you remember Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer when they were in opposition? They sat on the benches and screamed at the Conservatives. They called fiscal drag a pickpocketing of working people. They said it was dishonest. In her first budget last year, Reeves even touted her decision to eventually end the freeze, claiming that to do otherwise would hurt working people. Fast forward to November 27, 2025. What is the tune today? Pressed by reporters this afternoon, Reeves said, "I'm being open and honest. That is, from 2028, freezing thresholds for a bit longer, but we are putting money now in the pockets of working people." This is classic political verbal gymnastics. I am hurting you now to save you later. The truth is much simpler. The UK has a massive debt pile, low productivity growth, and an aging population. The government needs money. Raising headline tax rates is political suicide. It gets you on the front page of the tabloids. Freezing thresholds? It's boring. It's complicated. Most people don't notice it until they get a small raise and realize their take-home pay barely moved. It is the perfect crime because the victim doesn't realize they've been robbed until much later. But wait, there's more. The government didn't just freeze your income tax thresholds. They realized that smart people watching shows like this would try to avoid these higher taxes. How do you usually avoid hitting the £50,000 or £100,000 tax trap? You put more money into your pension via salary sacrifice. It reduces your taxable income. Well, the Chancellor has spotted that loophole and she is closing it. Starting from 2029, the government is curbing the tax break on salary sacrifice pension contributions. Both workers and employers will now pay national insurance on payments into retirement funds above a £2,000 annual limit. This is a technical detail, but the impact is huge. Currently, salary sacrifice is the last great tax haven for the British worker. By slapping national insurance on these contributions, the government is essentially saying, we will tax you if you spend, and now we will tax you if you save. The government claims this will affect about 26% of basic rate taxpayers and raise an extra £4.85 billion in the first year. But let's look at the behavioral economics. Analysts at Jefferies put out a note today saying affected workers will likely take full advantage to fill their pensions before the deadline. We are going to see a pension rush over the next 3 years. If you are in the UK, this is your signal. You have a window of opportunity before 2029 to maximize those contributions before the tax efficiency drops. There is another layer to this onion, and it smells just as strong. The government is changing the rules on ISAs. For years, the ISA has been a sacred cow. You could put £20,000 a year in, tax-free. You could keep it in cash or stocks. The new rule? The annual cap on contributions to cash ISAs will fall to £12,000. The remaining £8,000 of your allowance is now available only for stocks and shares accounts. Why are they doing this? This is where we have to look at the boss economic world big picture. The London Stock Exchange is dying. Valuations are low. Companies are fleeing to New York. The government is desperate to channel domestic capital into British equities. By forcing you out of cash ISAs and into stocks ISAs, they are trying to artificially pump liquidity into the stock market. It's financial engineering masked as savings policy. For the savvy investor, this is fine. But for the risk-averse saver? For the person saving for a house deposit who can't risk a market crash? This forces them into riskier assets or leaves them with a lower tax-free allowance. And for those who hold shares outside of ISAs? The dividend tax rate is rising by 2 percentage points from next April. This is a direct hit on small business owners who pay themselves in dividends and retirees who rely on dividend income. So, let's restore the full picture. What is actually happening to the UK economy in late 2025? We are witnessing a fundamental shift in the social contract. For decades, the deal was, work hard, get a pay rise, and you will feel richer. That link has been broken. 1. The inflation hangover, inflation has moderated, but prices remain high. 2. The tax squeeze, wages have risen to meet those prices, but because tax brackets haven't moved, the government is taking a larger slice of that inflation money. 3. The spending power drop, as a result, real disposable income is being eroded from both sides, higher costs of living and higher effective tax rates. This policy redefines who constitutes a high earner. In 2025, earning £50,000 does not make you rich. In London or the Southeast, with current rent and mortgage rates, it makes you just about solvent. Yet, the state treats you as a cash cow. The patchwork of tax increases Reeves is using, freezing thresholds, capping pension relief, tweaking ISAs, is designed to avoid breaking the letter of her campaign promises, while completely shattering the spirit of them. We don't just complain here, we strategize. If you are caught in this fiscal dragnet, what is the rational move? First, pension loading, you have until 2029 before the salary sacrifice cap hits. If you are hovering near the £50,000 or £100,000 thresholds, aggressive pension contributions are still your best defense today. Use the window while it is open. Second, ISA optimization. With the cash ISA limit dropping to £12,000, you need to get comfortable with stocks and shares ISAs if you want to utilize the full £20,000 allowance. Low-cost index funds are likely the destination for that extra £8,000. Third, income timing. If you are a business owner or contractor, the dividend tax hike in April means you should be looking at your distribution timing now. To wrap up, November 27, 2025, marks the day the UK government admitted that temporary measures are often permanent. The fiscal drag is no longer a bug in the system, it is the system. They are banking on the fact that you are too busy working to notice the water rising around your neck. They are counting on the complexity of the tax code to hide the reality of the revenue raid. But here on Boss Economic World, we see the water rising. The government is effectively betting that they can tax their way to prosperity by squeezing the productive middle class. History suggests that is a dangerous gamble. This is the reality of the 2025 economy. You are running faster just to stand still, and the government has just decided to turn up the speed on the treadmill. That's all for today. If you want to keep your head above water, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay smarter than the taxman. See you next time.